Welcome back to Astroline. We are joined by the general manager of the Houston Astros, Dana Brown. We are in his suite here at Daikin Park, where the Astros are enjoying their offseason. How has the offseason been for you? How busy has it been to this point? And as we get ready for the winter meetings, how busy do you expect it to be?
Very, very busy. Look, we got to get some starting pitching, and so we're locked in on that. And so anytime you talk about pitching, it's going to be busy, right? Because you need multiple pitchers to get through a season, and so we are very, very busy. We also talking about like some relief pitching, maybe a backup catcher. So we got our hands full. The guys are excited. We're fired up. We got a good team too. Well, let's talk about that team. That's a good team.
Okay, how do you lay the foundation at the GM meetings in Vegas recently? You were there. How do you make sure that everybody knows that this is what you're looking for? This is what might be available.
Yeah, basically through conversations, because part of it is you're going to be active in the free agent market. Part of it is going to be active in the trade market, and so you got to touch base with most of the teams and teams that you think you may match up with, and so we're very active and having a lot of conversations. Productive. You sort of set a foundation before the winter meetings at the GM meetings, and so we're locked in.
Last year, you had 23 different pitchers get a win. You had 15 different starters. That was second most to the 1965 Astros in team history. You had a lot of injuries to deal with, and you always came in here to this job saying you can never have enough pitching. Where do you find all the pitching in one offseason? As a combination of free agency and trades?
Yeah, waiver too as well. Look, we had to use 60 pitchers to get through the season. 60 players to get through the season. And so that makes it very difficult. And so, we were on the waiver wire a lot. Matt Hogan and his group, they grind through that every single day. And there's no preparation for, using that amount of pitchers to get through a season, right? You don't anticipate it, but you still have to be prepared for it. And I thought the guys did a good job. We got really productive pitching from Walter. Alexander was really good. Thank God we signed Olkert. We brought him into camp. We just had a ton of guys that we were able to use to get through the season, and it would have been even more difficult. De Los Santos, he pitched some big innings for us. And so you always need pitching. You can't win without pitching, right? And so it was just a long season, and every injury that we got, it was one after the other. It was more grueling. And so just locking in on the pitching is where we find ourselves again this year, just saying, let's build it. Let's continue to add to it. And, good things will happen.
Dana, when you think about that volume of innings that you need to cover, is there any ever conversation about philosophy on how do we get their starters deeper into the ball games?
Yeah, the intriguing thing is like we struck a lot of guys out, like second in baseball behind the Dodgers, first in our league. And so, thank God we have really good pitching people here.
Yep.
Led by Josh Miller, who's been outstanding. Murphy was there. We lost Murph to a number one job with the Pirates, but, he was outstanding. And so, just through all throughout the organization, we have really good pitching people that really helped our guys, step it up. Guys come here, they get better. We saw what happened last year with Kikuchi. He came over. And, so we do a really good job here with the pitchers. Thank God, because, it really showed last year. You had guys that, were being DFA'd and guys sitting down, and, we continued to claim guys, and they came here and they got better. And so, thank God we have a factory. We just have to keep building it.
Hey, you mentioned a couple of those guys, Brandon Walter, Jason Alexander, guys that had either dealt with injuries or dealt with being let go by the A's that became big parts of your rotation. Your one move so far, and I know there's going to be more coming, is Nate Pearson. You guys find something in each guy that you really like. What is it about Pearson that you're excited about in 2026?
Yeah, big fella with arm strength, right? And he's got big league, experience. And so he throws hard. He's been up to 98. His ball takes off at the top of the zone. He's got a pretty good breaking ball, and we know guys come here, they get better. We're going to try to zone in on what we could do. What's his pitch arsenal, right? We should try to figure out what he's going to use to be the most successful. And it may mean using the breaking ball a little bit more. It may mean throwing the fastball in this area of the zone. And so our guys do a really good job of that. And, Pearson is a guy that I had some history with from Toronto. We took him in the first round when I was there. And when he became available, we said, look, big dude, arm strength, has had some success. These are the guys that, we do well with. And so we're really looking forward to getting him in camp. We're going to try to, start him, maybe potentially he could start. And if not, he'll be a good, back end guy, maybe 6th, 7th inning. But hopefully he could start. That would really help us out.
What's the one thing that you've seen? You talk about a pitching factory. We've seen this for a long time, too, is how guys get better. What do you think that the Astros do a little bit differently than other teams as far as getting guys better?
I think we pay attention to the data a lot. We find out what really works for that particular pitcher, whoever it is. We zone in on that. We get them to master it. And then we figure out, okay, what's the best secondary he should use and when should he use it and how much should he use it. And I think that's what we really do a real good job at. And so, as I said before, led by Josh Miller, we really get it done.
You mentioned the use of 60 players, and I know you and Joe Espada did not want to use that as a crutch in your postseason comments, but it is the reality of what you dealt with in 2025. Have you ever seen anything like that? There were times when you're trying to guess who's going to come up, and you're like, well, this guy's going to come up because he's the only one left on the 40-man roster who's healthy. Have you ever seen anything like this in your baseball career, what happened to the Astros in 2025?
No, 36 years in a game, and I've never seen anything remotely close to it. And that's being on some bad teams and some good teams, but just to have to use 60 players is unbelievable. You usually use somewhere between 40 and 45. To use 60 to get through a season is pretty tough, and so I've never seen anything like it. In fact, I had people in the game saying, how are you guys still competing in September? And it's just a testament, as I said before, to our pitching guys, and they really kept us in games. And we had guys coming up, even on the hitting side, we had guys like Matthew who came up that one weekend and provided a lot of help in Arizona. And so we had some young kids who, were playing Cole when he came up. He was really good. And so we were just trying to get, some contributions from wherever it came from. And so, I think overall, we will never use that as an excuse. But the reality is when you have to use 60 players to get through a season, it's going to be very difficult to get to the postseason. And so the way we went down to the wire, 161 is where, we were officially knocked out. And so it went all the way down. And I still feel like we would have made the postseason if we didn't lose Jordan and Pena for those last 6 games. I still feel like in my soul we would have still gone. And we had one point where we had our number 1, our number 2, and our number 3 hitter out for over a month. You had Pena, Paredes, and Jordan all out. That's really difficult. And the tough part is to have those guys out for more than a month and come up one game short. It keeps you up at night. So, and it's been a driving force for me that, I'm so locked in to the depth and, what we do to prepare for injuries and, all of that. But it was a really difficult season, to say the least.
It was hard, and you told us this many times last year. It was hard to compensate for Jordan's injury because he was one of the only lefties that you really had in the lineup, so it made things tough to balance out your lineup. As your roster sits right now, what do you want to address more than anything as far as just your roster construction?
Yeah, starting pitching is what I mentioned. That's very important. Talking about the left-hand bat situation, that could be something that we could address. It'd be nice to get another left-hand bat if possible. We know that it's very difficult, through free agency to get left-hand bats and pitching because there's so few of each. And so, but definitely we have to bolster our roster with some pitching depth.
When you talk about going to the winter meetings and seeing guys in person, face to face, is there a nuance that enhances the possibility of a trade as opposed to just, texts or phone calls? Does getting in front of somebody help you out in your time as a general manager?
Yeah, I think it's, so when you get to the winter meetings, you're further into the off season, a little different from, the GM meetings. So you kind of get locked in more at the winter meetings because you do get in front of these guys. You go to their suite or they come to your suite. The agents are there, so you kind of know where you stand on the free agents. And so if that thing's falling apart, you kind of start leaning toward trade or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And so it's where a lot of things take place. It's a big part. It's a big part of the off season. And so we will be engaged, in free agent and trade and waiver. Rule 5 draft is also during the winter meetings. And so, maybe there's a chance we get someone in the Rule 5 draft.
You're talking about your suite at the winter meetings. Lay it out for us. How many people are in your suite, and what are those conversations like?
Yeah, so it varies. Early in the morning when we first meet and huddle up, there's, it could be as many as 12 to 15 people.
Okay.
But later in the day, when you really start getting locked in on the meetings with the agents and the meetings with other clubs, it's more so, myself, my assistant GMs, and maybe, Matt Hogan, who oversees our player personnel. And so, or Anthony Cascione.
Yeah.
So we kind of narrow it down when the meetings get tight. And so, but early on when you huddle up, it's the whole group, and then you kind of disperse, and then they have meetings that they have to go to, some of them, and then we lock in on maybe trades or free agents.
Dana, before we talk a little Astros baseball, congrats on another guy that you helped sign to the Atlanta Braves, Drake Baldwin, winning Rookie of the Year. You have been a part of a lot of guys that have either won Rookie of the Year or finished second or third. That has to be, as your scouting part of you, beaming with pride. That has to make you feel pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've spent my entire career in scouting, right? And so I've learned how to identify players, and I love it. It's a big part of my career, and it's what I do even as a GM. You're evaluating players all the time, whether it's your roster or somebody else's roster, and you're trying to figure out who you should acquire. But in the draft, it was really a lot of fun, and somebody sent me something where they said you signed 4 of the last 12 guys that were even considered or won Rookie of the Year.
Wow.
So
wow,
yeah,
Strider was one of them.
Yeah, Strider, Harris.
Okay.
And then there was the most recent Baldwin and
Schwellenbach.
Durbin.
Oh, Durbin, yeah.
Durbin was so 4 of the 12.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. The last 12. So it's look, I take pride in the scouting part. I'm a very instinctual guy, and then when you give me a little data and information and I zone in on the makeup, I feel like I can get it right.
I think you like to delegate, Dana, from what I've seen you do, and how much you've praised Matt Hogan and Anthony, all these guys. But as far as the scouting goes, in the first and second rounders, and I think of Walker Yannick, and I think of Bryce Matthews, the last year with Dyens, Treadwell is the one that interests me because he was the guy out of UCLA, second rounder 3 years ago, and you put your stamp of approval on him, and he struggled for a little bit. But last year, he started to take off. And a lot of it's health, but what did you see in him to say, okay, we want to get him high in the draft?
Yeah, a big part of it is, look, nobody bats 1,000, right? And so you try to get all these guys right. But the one thing with him is he was a big dude with arm strength, right? And that usually plays. And so he fought through some injuries. And I think, the fact that he's starting to get through that period of time where he was injured. Now you're, the one thing I learned early in scouting is be careful about, judging guys when they're injured because, they could come back to haunt you. And so now that he's finally healthy, we'll see what he's going to be. We're going to give him every opportunity. He was a high pick, and so we had some guys that really liked him. And me, like you said, I'm big on delegating, and guys were, kind of talking about how good he was. I never got a chance to see him, but just listening to the room,
Okay.
There was a lot of guys that really liked him. And so, Yeah, we feel like he could be an interesting piece, going down the road. But the big dude with arm strength and competitive, and he's starting to show some makeup because he's fighting through some adversity. So we'll see what this turns out to be.
Speaking of competitors, how about James Hicks winning Arizona Fall League Pitcher of the Year? Another guy that you signed. He's not exactly a guy who's going to light up the radar gun, but he knows how to pitch, huh?
Yeah, Hicks is like the old area scout special. A guy that doesn't go high, and you got an area scout fighting for him. He's been scouring the whole area for the whole year. He's driving over 35,000 miles in that year. He's going to double ups, and he's seeing he may be a guy that he was seen in late May. You just never know. And so that's why the draft is so important. You never know when you're going to get a guy high or when you're going to get a guy low. You may be 11th rounder, 12th rounder, 20th rounder. That's the beauty of the draft, and it's pretty special when you see some of these, guys that don't go high, like Mayer. Mayer's another one. He's got a good arm, and he didn't go high. And
16th round.
Yeah, 16th round.
Yeah.
You get these guys sometimes. And, it's all part of the game. That's what makes baseball special. It rarely happens in the other sports because they don't go that many rounds. But just to be in a sport where you can go, 20 rounds and still find good players in the 18th and the 17th and the 12th, that makes our game special. And it gives a lot of kids opportunity. And I think it's what make these young kids continue to flourish, and they grind through it because they know – the only thing is I need one guy to see me and scout me, and I get a chance to get drafted, and it could change my whole career.
At certain points of the year last year, and we talked about how many pitchers you needed, but at one point you had a fifth rounder in the rotation. At one point you had a sixth rounder, at one point a seventh rounder, an eighth rounder, and a ninth rounder in your rotation last year. Is that a secret pocket for you? I mean, do you like guys right around there that might have a chip on their shoulder that didn't go a little higher?
Look, I take so much pride in getting guys outside the first three rounds. I've signed, guys that have become all-stars after the first three rounds. And so I take a lot of pride in it, and I try to instill that in the guys to say, look, I walk around the room during draft day. I say, guys, look, there's still a lot of big leaguers on the board. There's a couple all-stars on the board. You just got to find them. Where are they? And, you kind of preach that when you're walking through on draft day, and guys really they lock in, and they really get focused on, who's this next guy that's got a chance to make our roster and have an impact. And so it's a beautiful thing when this happens, because the scouts who are involved, they get excited, they get more confident, and they get bold, and it's good. That's a good place to be for the organization.
If you take excitement out of that, you might also take that same excitement out of not being ranked anywhere but the bottom five by Baseball America and others in terms of your minor league system. And you had a Bryce Matthews, a Zach Cole, an A.J. Blueball, Colton Gordon, Ryan Gusto, Grayson Murray all make impacts on your 2025 team, despite where the Astros have been ranked the last few years. Are there others that aren't being looked at maybe by some of these publications that could make an impact at 2026 that are getting closer here to the big league level?
Yeah, I mean, you have guys that, you sign internationally, like Ulloa.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a good arm. This guy's got a chance to be, pretty good, and so anytime where you could add to this group of players that are coming up, and, Baseball America, they do their thing, and we all understand that and respect that. But I always say, look, our goal is to get our players up to the big leagues, and sometimes – you take a Cam Smith and you put him in the big leagues. He's not in the minor league, so it makes your minor league prospects look worse, right? And so, but the whole goal is you can't lose sight of winning at the major league level. And so, look, I kind of get locked in, and I'm excited about it. Petco's another one.
Mm-hmm.
He's a young guy that we took after the fourth round, and, I think he's got a chance to have a really good career in the big leagues. I think he's got power stuff. He's been up to 97. He's got wicked secondary stuff. And so he's another one. So I think getting locked into this area of the draft, I think that's where you could do a lot of damage. In addition to 1 through 3, if you do well there and you do well, from 4 to 10, and whatever is after 10 is gravy. Like you start nailing guys in the 15th and 12th and 17th, and that's just going to really make your organization deep. and it's going to give you some trade chips. We have to trade away a few guys. Gusto is one of those guys that wasn't taken high. We moved him in the trade, and so you need these pieces, in order to be successful at the major league level. And I think the draft is a big part of what we do. Every
year when I get to spring training, I'll go in the manager's office to get an idea of maybe the first 3 games of the lineups and things like that. And it almost has a depth chart in Joe Espada's office on the wall, and I'll take a picture of that. And last year, I'll never forget, is Joe pointed to one guy on that, I think the first day on opening day in spring training, he said, this guy's going to be in the big leagues. Somebody we hadn't seen play yet. I'd heard of him through the draft. It was Sullivan. Tell me about what you feel with Joseph Sullivan.
Yeah, Sullivan's another one taken after the 5th round. He was a strong gut feel for Cam Pendino. And, it's a left type of guy who, hits left, throws left, really good defender, has bloodlines of athletes in his family.
Yep.
And so, just took a flyer on him, like say, hey, this guy, fits the bill. He's got a scout that's pounding for gut feel. He's got data and information that's saying he's a pretty good defender. And we know the makeup was pretty special. And so we end up taking a guy like that, and he's definitely a guy that you got a chance to see out here. You'll get a chance to see out here maybe in 2026 if he continues to grow and turn the corner. But he's got a chance to be a really good defender. He can hit the ball out of the ballpark. It's a left-hand bat, something that we talk about now and that we need. And so I get fired up talking about him because I know he wasn't a high pick, but it's makeup, it's talent, it's data and information, and ultimately it's a gut feel by a scout, who really wanted him. So
let's switch now to the current 2026 group at the big league level. There's going to be some positions to be won. You've already talked about the pitching in the last segment, especially in the outfield. How do you view the outfield for the Astros going into 2026 spring training? Is it a competition for a couple of spots?
Yeah, so look, we're going to have guys now for a full year. Like we didn't have Zach Cole for the full year. I mentioned that before. Zach Cole's a guy that we brought up. We feel good about him. We didn't have Sanchez for the full year. We got him in the trade, so you're going to have him for the full year. Cam Smith we have for the full year. He had some great moments, and then he had some moments where he struggled a little bit, which is normal, for a young player. And so, we got Myers who's there. You're going to probably look at Alvarez. He's going to get some games in left field. And so it's going to be a lot of competition in right and center, some in left, when Alvarez is DHing, and so I think we have a good core of guys that we're looking at, and I know these guys are working their tails off this off season, and so it's going to be fun. Competition's not the enemy of victories, and so we know that it's very important to have competition in order to create these winning seasons, and so we're looking forward to it.
What do you think Cam was able to learn from last year that can help him for next year?
Yeah, first of all, took huge strides defensively. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know if I've ever seen a guy learn a new position, never played it, go to the big leagues, and become like one of the finalists for a Gold Glove. That's a big stride.
Yep.
And then with the bat, he had moments last year where he was like unconscious. He was driving balls to right, hitting home runs to left, driving balls up the middle, outrunning balls here, going first and third, making great catches. And so it's a total package, total player, just has to refine his skill set so that he could have continued success at the big league level. And so I think he's a talented guy that once he gets his hands in the right spot where he feels really comfortable, I think his career is going to take off. And I know he's working his tail off right now, and he's got a chance to be a pretty good player.
I think people forget when you guys got to 20 games over 500 at 55 and 35, Cam was kind of right in the middle, the 2-hitter, the 4-hitter at times. You guys were playing Cooper Hummel on a regular basis. You were playing Zach Short on a regular basis. You guys got to 20 games above 500 with way less than your A lineup. And I know you said you had some sleepless nights this offseason thinking how close you came with all the injuries. Does that excite you knowing what you did in that downtime with the regulars out to be able to give guys experience that could really bode well for 2026.
Absolutely. Anytime that you get a chance to see some of your young and up-and-coming players that you think have a chance to be a star, that's an exciting time for the franchise, exciting time for the city. The fans get fired up seeing some of these young players, and I think Cam Smith brought a lot of excitement. And so, we're looking forward to more of that and a more consistent Cam Smith. And anytime these young players come up that you really didn't even think about, like Zach Cole, when he came up,
right.
we were really struggling, and we didn't have a left-hand bat, and we were really struggling offensively. First at bat, home run, first pitch, really set the tone. And so when you start getting that from young players, that's kind of like where you want to be. That's the sweet spot. And we're hoping for more of that continued success. I mentioned Matthews earlier. The weekend he had in Arizona when we swept them, that was a big part of the season right there. You're going in Arizona, they were playing well. And so, look, these young guys that are coming up and providing a spark, it's a big thing.
One of the toughest guys to lose last year was Paredes, no doubt about it. His approach at the plate, I think, was contagious, but it also just gave the other pitchers a really tough go. Any at-bat that he had was going to make it better for the guys that follow Paredes just because he'd wear them out. Where does he stand health-wise right now, and where do you see him fit?
Yeah, losing him, it was really gut-wrenching. He is that guy who will have a 9, 10, 12 pitch at bat.
Yeah.
Then you lose Jordan on top of it. So both those guys were out at some point for more than 60 days at the time, and that's just losing two grinding hitters in your lineup, and that's a really difficult thing to recover from. Very difficult. We were very fortunate to get through those times, and so right now he's on a normal rehab, and his hamstring is getting a lot better. He decided that he didn't want to go the route of surgery because he came back and he felt pretty good. And so right now he's doing some physical therapy in Mexico. He's seeing, a pretty good trainer there, and he's getting his work in. And we feel like, look, he's going to be ready for spring training. So at some point, and so we got to, test him as he continues to get stronger. But, he was able to avoid the surgery aspect, and he felt good about his return because of, what he did when he came back. And right away when he came back, he had a home run. He started seeing a lot of pitches. We missed him. And so we feel like he's a big part of what we're doing here. He's built for this ballpark. And he was really good defensively, too.
Yeah, better than advertised, I thought, at third base. He was really good. But now you have two Gold Glove shortstops on the left side of your infield. So what positions do you see possibly for Paredes in 2026?
Yeah, I think he'll get a lot of DH time, when Alvarez is, in left field. So he'll get that DH time. And he'll get some time at first base when we want to give Walker a breather. He'll get some time at third base when we want to give Correa a breather. And so sometimes Correa is going to play short when we give Jeremy a breather, so he'll play third then. And so there's going to be enough at bats, right? And we feel good that, we can give these guys a breather and not run them into the ground. Part of last year's guys were playing with some, minor ailments, and those minor ailments, kind of get magnified a little bit more when you have a roster that's beat up and they still have to post even when they could use a day off. And so hopefully we don't have to do any of that. Having these guys, we have a little bit more depth, and that's going to help us out in the long run. 162, that's a grind.
A.J. Blueball did well as a reliever last year. A.J. Blueball did well as a starter last year. Is the thought process going into spring training is just to stretch him out and see how the roster shapes up?
Absolutely. I think you stretch him out, see how it shapes up. You lock him in as a starter. Hopefully, he takes the bull by the horn and gets this done. Worst come to worst, you could definitely put him in the pen. He'll be 95, 98. Mm-hmm. But, look, he did well as a starter. We want to keep him locked in as a starter. I think, you see these young players up and you see where they start to develop and find themselves, and you're an eyewitness to it. And you could see it front row seat last year. He really started to take off.
Oh, yeah.
And it was nice to see, because it's tough when a young pitcher comes up. You never know what you're going to get.
All right,
but he continued to grind.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Last question, Dana. We've talked starters, we've talked position players, bullpen. What's it looking like for 2026? And I guess we'll start from the back end forward. Where's Josh Hader's situation?
Yeah, Hader is doing very well. He got some time off the mound before he finally shut it down for his normal off season, so he was able to ramp it back up. No pain. He was pain free. He was excited. And so he's going to have a normal offseason as he start to build up in January. So he's in good shape. Abreu, of course, he did well last year. He's locked in. And, we got King, who's really locked in. He's having a normal offseason. Sousa, who's, another one that threw the ball very well.
What about health-wise?
Health-wise, he's going to have a normal offseason.
Okay.
He's finally really starting to feel healthy, and that's a big one for us because, he went down and we lost some really important innings because he was throwing some leverage innings as well, even though some of them were in the 6th, some of them were in the 7th. But he always found himself in the middle of a really, tough game. And Okert's going to be good. That's another one. He's locked in. We'll have him. He's ARB eligible. We'll have him locked in for the season.
How about Grayson Murray?
Yeah. And Murray was like a huge addition there late. I'm excited about Murray. He came in. He was up to 97, a bunch of 96s and 7. Really good breaking ball. Wasn't scared. Threw a lot of strikes. So we got him. He's a guy that has got a really good chance of being on this team. And so our bullpen is really good. We felt like if we could add some more help with optionable guys. We don't have many guys with options, but if we could add some more guys, that with options. Ort was a guy that he was down a little bit because of the injury, but he had moments where he was throwing high leverage games up to 98, and so we still have a real good core of bullpen guys, and if we could add some optionable guys to that, that would be very, very helpful. But all in all, if we can add 2 starters or at least one really good starter, we feel like with the rest of our rotation and depth, along with the bullpen, our pitching is going to be fine. And I know our position players are going to get after it, and we're not anticipating any injuries this year. And so we should be a really good team.
Last thing from me, Dana, watching the postseason, you couldn't help but notice that everybody's throwing split-fingered fastballs. I mean, that just became the rage all the playoffs. Any conversation with you guys starting to tinker with that a little bit more? I can't think of anybody that really throws one.
Yeah, I think guys pick their spots. If you have a guy that's having a problem finding a changeup, you may want to give him a split. I think it'd be a case-by-case basis. Yeah. But I saw the split and how well it was working. Mm-hmm. Definitely wasn't a stranger to it.
It's not like you guys aren't striking guys out.
Yeah, we second in strikeouts overall, just behind the Dodgers by 1. With the injuries that we had. And so I think our guys are really good.
Yeah.
Dana Brown, General Manager of the Houston Astros, thank you so much for the time.
All right. Appreciate you guys having me on. Enjoyed it as always.